So I clicked it. Still thinking about it. Okay.
Now we're live. We are live. Sometimes computers think about it before they go live. Welcome to Round Real Autism Mom. I'm Holly, and this is my good friend Shannon. And before we go into her story and her amazing daughter, I just want to reemphasize how important it is for individuals to share their stories, to connect with people so that no one feels alone. Because there's a lot of people in this world. And guess what? There's a lot of autistic people in this world. That means there's parents with autistic children. And the rate of children being born on the spectrum is just skyrocketing. And so I just can't even fathom why someone would feel alone. Well, I felt alone when I first got the diagnosis with my older son. And I've got 2 on the spectrum. But I just felt super alone. And I'm like, why? Why would I feel alone? So one of the reasons why my wonderful friend came to share her story about her experience is so that you don't ever feel alone as an autism mom. So, Shannon, you have a daughter who is autistic, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, tell us a little bit about her and about you and your story.
Okay, so my daughter was diagnosed fairly recently, but she's turning 24 this week.
Okay.
But we've always known, even from when she was really young, that something was a little different. And it wasn't until I was teaching 2nd grade, and she was in the 2nd grade, not in my class, but I had a student that had Asperger's. And it was then like everything started clicking, and I started to realize, oh, maybe this is what's going on. But, you know, from even when she was really small, like 18 months to 3 years old, we noticed when she was like playing in the park, she didn't want to get her hands in the sand, and it was kind of funny watching her, because if she fell down off the slide or something, she'd be like trying to get up and like not touch the sand.
The ground.
But she always hated getting water on her head, when she was a baby even, and so, you know, bath time, it was like, okay, we got to wash her hair really fast, because she would scream bloody murder every time, because she just could not stand having the water on her head. So there were little things that, you know, little indicators that something was a little different. She would line up all her toys in order. And then when she started daycare, she was probably about 18 months old, 2 years old. And so sometimes she would sit there and she'd put all her little animals and things and be playing with them, and people would try to talk to her and she would just not even react. So they had us get her hearing tested, because she would do that to us too. And they're like, there's nothing wrong with her hearing.
Sounds familiar.
Yep.
Yeah, keep going.
Yep, she was just in her own little world doing her thing. And so they sent us to play therapy with her. And, you know, they just had her playing with her little toys again. And I guess another reason we went there, she started having like horrible meltdowns. So she was a little late with her speaking. She would say little words here and there, but for the most part, you know, she would try to copy us and make funny little sounds. And like I was talking to you before, she would pretend she was talking on the phone, and she'd be like, yeah, ha 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 ha, and then hang the phone up.
That's adorable.
Because that's what she thought we sounded like.
She's got these like social interactions, right?
Yes.
And she's copying you guys, and she's understanding that.
Yeah, so she would get so frustrated because she couldn't say the things she wanted to say, that she would have horrible meltdowns where she would scream. And this was my first child. I was a young mom, and so there were sometimes I would just shut the door. I would let her be out in the hall screaming. I'd go in my room and shut the door and just cry, because I didn't know what to do. And I mean, I even had the thought cross my mind, like, oh, do I need to like adopt her out to another family, because I can't handle this. Like, I don't know what to do. And so we did end up getting some help with her. Like I said, we went to a play therapist, and luckily at that time we were living in Sweden, so there were a lot more resources available to us. I don't know how it is here nowadays, but
we're in the U.S. right now.
Yes, we're in the U.S. And so she even got an extra resource for her at daycare, so that when she started getting worked up and when she was getting upset and having a meltdown, this person would take her out to another room where it was quiet, and they had a little suitcase with little toys in it that were like little animals and little people.
Little distractors for her.
So she would get them out, and she would do her little thing, lining them up, and that would calm her down, and then they could take her back to the group. So that also helped us to learn some strategies for, okay, what do
Yeah, it
we
sounds
need
like
to
they
do?
know what they're doing in Sweden.
Yes. And so, we have some really good friends over there who have an autistic son who he's nonverbal. He's 22 now.
Okay.
22, yeah. And the dad was actually a professor here in the U.S. for a little while when the kids were really young, and they thought about moving over here. But when their son got his diagnosis, they're like, nope, we got to go back to Sweden because they needed
fascinating.
They needed the resources that they had there, and their son. It's been difficult. They're amazing people, and maybe you should interview them sometime.
That would
Do
be
an
honor.
international
Yeah.
interview of that. But just those resources were really helpful, and luckily for us, our daughter is very, very high functioning, and I think that was another thing that made it a little, like, I wasn't sure, because when you hear about kids with autism, you think like, oh, they avoid eye contact, they can't make connections with people, all the
Yeah, they have the stereotypical things that you first think of, and it's a lot of times it's just not it's not your child, so you think, well,
exactly, they call it a spectrum for a reason.
Yes,
and she's yes, and she's not that way at all. And she was the kid that could, like, we'd go to the store and she'd have a new friend, very social.
So she was super outgoing and she talked to new people. What new experiences how'd she do with that, like growing up?
Younger, I think when she was younger, it wasn't as noticeable as when she started to get into the teen years is when it really started to, emerge, the kind of quirkiness and some of those things that set her apart from other kids. She was always highly intelligent. Like, I don't know any other 10-year-old that comes up to you at the store and says, I still need to purchase these items. So it was so cute.
That's adorable. Yeah.
But, it's just, I guess I didn't worry about her as much because she had that social side. She had friends that she hung out with, even though, other kids could be mean to her because she was quirky and she hated to wash her hair sometimes. And there was once that my in-laws were visiting, and she might get mad at me for telling this story, but my in-laws were visiting us, and she was probably, I want to say, 12-ish, 13-ish.
Well, that's a really easy age anyway, right?
Yeah.
We all just love all of our stories that happened at 12 and 13. Yeah, it's great.
So she was about to head out the door to school, and my mother-in-law comes up and she says, you need to brush your hair. And she just gets really frustrated. She's like, I brushed it yesterday. And then my mother-in-law just busted up laughing, and she was so irritated. So she got her hair brushed. But, that was always a struggle. And she's, now she's turning 24 this week. And so, it's been throughout her life just different things that have been different concerns for us. When she was little, it was the, slowness with speaking and the meltdowns. And then, as she was moving into being older, 11, 12, 13, just worrying that kids were going to bully her, or, as her little quirkiness came out, like, she told me once that when she was, she was in 4th grade, I think, and there were some kids that kept messing around and doing some stuff, and she went in and talked to the principal and said, like, there are some things we need to change at this school. She's never been afraid to say, like, hey, and even in junior high, some kid threw a pop bottle on the floor, and she's like, hey, you need to pick that up. Like, she, just, I don't know, she's like fearless.
Yeah.
She's
not afraid to speak her mind and let people know how she's feeling.
And sometimes that's not taken very well by peers.
Well, kids are, kids have their own insecurities. I mean, autistic or not. I can probably tell you a handful of girls that would be like, I brushed my hair yesterday that aren't autistic too. Right. But I love it. Yeah, I love hearing your stories and stuff like that. So
yeah, there's a ton of them. But some of the things, like thinking about the way other people react around us. My friend that I told you about in Sweden, it's harder when they're younger, I think, because my friend said, I want to get a t-shirt that just says I'm autistic on it, like, back
to
off,
let people
basically.
know that they need to not judge and they need
Exactly.
to not try and just come and discipline my child. Like,
And I
back
think
off.
that's one of the biggest things that, we get what we call Karens or whatever people who think
Yeah,
that
I
they're
know.
trying to
All of
help
those
out
people
and-
that really need Karen. Sorry.
I know, it's so sad.
But the Karens, like, how else would you describe a Karen? It's just easy to say one word.
Mhm.
Everyone knows what you're talking about. But yeah.
Yeah, there was
the Karens.
one time when we were at the grocery store with Hannah when she was little, and how old was she? Like 2, 3, maybe she was just 2, and we wouldn't let her play with the food in the freezer case, and we stuck her in the cart so she
You're
could play
so
with it.
mean.
I know, and she started screaming.
Why wouldn't you
She
let
was
the 2-year-old
screaming.
go inside of a freezer and play with? Like, why?
Yeah, I don't know, but she
Okay,
was just
keep
screaming
going.
bloody murder.
Yeah.
And this woman walks up and she says to my husband, "You need to talk to her."
Like,
you need to talk to her.
just
And then-
assuming that your husband, like, that the dad just isn't involved or something.
Yeah.
Like, you don't touch your child,
Because
obviously.
he was there with the cart and she's sitting there screaming like, "Oh," like full up. And he just
we don't do
said-
that. We don't talk to our children. That's what you say. We don't do that. It's not in our family. We don't talk. We don't
No.
communicate.
no, not at all, especially when you're out in public places.
Yeah.
And so he says to her, like, "Well, we don't want her playing with the frozen food, so we're putting her in the cart." "Oh, well, you need to talk to her because she's screaming." And so then she tries to walk away. And so he follows her with the cart. "So what should I say to her?"
Okay.
And
I've never met your
she's like
husband,
waving
but
her
that's
arms
hilarious.
like, no, really. What should I say to
Yeah,
her?
because you obviously have all the answers.
Exactly.
So let me know.
I think he asked
What
this poor
words?
woman like 3 times. And then she finally let her get away. But
Well, hopefully she learned her lesson. And that's just it. It's like people. It's like, why do they do that?
I think as long as, there's no immediate harm, like they're not hurting themselves
Yeah.
or someone else or damaging property, like just keep your thoughts to yourself and like you don't know what's going
Well,
on.
it gives someone the benefit of the doubt, you know.
Exactly.
Because I mean, like, before I had my 2 autistic children, and I only had the 3. Well, only 3. 3 is a lot. I'm not gonna say only. But when I had the 3, my opinions would have been. I mean, I wouldn't share them with people, but I would still be like, man, like, come on, it's not that hard, right? Because my experience is like, it's not that hard to manage a child, in a public place or something.
Mhm.
But now, the whole word discipline and the whole word parenting is just completely shifted for me. And so now it's like, oh, I've been there.
Mhm.
I've been there. And I won't judge anyone for losing a child. because I've got a little escape artist. And so it's like, I just tell people, I mean, we're just like, introduce my autistic son to new neighbors, let them know. And of course, we do all we can to keep them safe and things like that. But we do appreciate the neighbors and friends and even the strangers who are just kind and they're not Karens. Okay, we don't need any more Karens in this world.
They're not
we really,
mean Karens.
yeah, mean Karens. Actually, know one person named Karen. She's a very nice person.
Yes, me too.
But yeah, that's fascinating. So that's what your husband did. I can imagine that. Just going up to be like, so what words should I say to her? What exactly do you have in mind? Because you have all the answers
I'm
here.
a young parent. Please help me. I would appreciate any help I can get.
Yeah, and then just magic words to help the child calm down.
Well, and back then we didn't have a diagnosis.
Exactly.
We didn't.
So you couldn't tell people, oh, she's autistic.
Yeah.
We're trying. It's like, we don't know. We
Yeah,
don't have the answers.
at that age, it was our first child, and
Yeah.
you just don't know what you don't know. And like I said, it wasn't even until she was like 8 years old that it finally clicked that like, oh, there may be something going on the spectrum here.
Yeah.
So I just knew she was a little different and a little quirky.
Well, one reason why I love your story is because it's so different than mine, honestly. Because I've got 2 boys who are more like moderate severe autistic, and even though they're very different from each other, super different, it came as a shock when my 5th child was diagnosed. I was like, no, because I was watching him and I was like, oh, he's doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
He figured that out. He copied the guy. And in my perspective, I was like, oh, I don't think he is autistic.
Yeah.
We we head in there, and sure enough, he's moderate to severe autistic, and so I have a lot to learn. But I love hearing your story. It's so different than mine because you decided that it was better for your daughter to maybe not get a diagnosis until later, when it was more beneficial for her. And so I'd like you to tell that story because, whatever you feel comfortable sharing about why, because there are kids out there where the parent can go, you're the parent. You can make the decision, and go along with your child, especially depending on how verbal they are, how they can communicate to you their wishes and their desire. But you know your child. You're the expert on your child. So you're the one who's going to be like, okay, maybe we'll wait on this. Or maybe we really need to get a diagnosis as fast as we can because that's my story. Yes. That's my story. Like, I needed it. Mm-hmm. But tell us, right, and how you felt it was beneficial for your child to kind of wait a little bit.
Yeah, so with my daughter, like I said, she had friends. She did well in school. Mm-hmm. She was also diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as an 8-year-old.
Oh,
and
okay.
So
she's got that on top.
She's got that too. And that was my thinking. As long as she's functioning well and things are going well in school, I'm not going to add one more diagnosis onto her.
Intellectually, she was thriving in school, you said.
Oh, yeah.
And then she had friends.
Straight A's.
She's got, she's got these straight A's. Yeah. And she's got her friends.
So her real issues started, I think, when she went off to college, because it was a big change.
That's a huge change. That's such a hard time.
She was moving out. She moved in with roommates, and she actually moved, an hour away from home. And so we were a little concerned because we weren't sure how things were going to go, and it was pretty stressful for her, and she struggled in her classes. And so I found her a really good therapist who works with young adults that are on the spectrum. Yes. And that
someone who knows
so
autism.
Much. Yes, someone
who knows autism.
Someone who has the clinical experience
Yeah.
to help her through some of those issues. And so that was so helpful and turned things around for her.
That's awesome.
But then she did get that diagnosis because, like you were saying, depending on the needs, she needed some of those accommodations, some extra time on exams. And so I guess, that's one thing to consider if you see your child struggling in school, that you go and you get that IEP and you get that extra help that they need. Mm-hmm. I guess this goes back to my thinking too, that I saw there was a study recently that showed that, highly intelligent parents are very likely to have autistic children.
I think that's true.
It is. There was a study that saw that. But, it got me thinking about, our brains are so complex and there's so much we don't understand about them. Mm-hmm. And, my daughter's one of the first that would be very upset with you if you called her being on the spectrum a disability because she doesn't see it that way at all.
Yeah.
I think, and it's kind of my way of thinking about it, people who are autistic use their brains differently. They have different ways of seeing the world and different ways of thinking.
And maybe, sorry to interrupt you, but to add to that list, maybe experiencing the world differently. Like how you used to when she was little, she had different sensory experiences that you were having, that you had experienced. So,
exactly.
It was different.
And so I think as a parent, one of the most important things you can do is do your research and try to understand where your child's coming from, how they're experiencing things, and try to be patient with them through that.
Yes.
Because that's a very difficult thing, is having that patience. But I think knowledge is power, like they say. The more you understand about what's going on with your child in their head,
their point of view, and
their experience, and how they are experiencing things and feeling things, then it can help you to have that patience and maybe have a better understanding.
Yeah, well, I think that's some amazing advice. So thank you so much, Sharon, for coming. And so when I hear your story and I think about my boys, there's so much I want to give them. I just want to give them. They are more severe, autistic, but we did find out with Simon that he has no autistic delay. And I'm still figuring out kind of what that means for him. Sorry, not autistic, intellectual. Mm-hmm. I said that wrong. I'm very wrong. No intellectual delay.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, but I wanted to let you know. Oh, no intellectual delay. Don't you love being live? It's the best. To see normally I would cut that out and start over. Then you wouldn't know, but that's why we go live. So you can see the mistakes.
We're real people.
Yeah, we're real people. We make mistakes, right? We don't know exactly the moment when we're going live. But I love what you've given to your child. I love that you've been a support for her, and you always are. And I think that you're just an amazing example of an autism mom. You know that you have, you know, like there have been times where you've been in your room just crying like I don't know what to do. But that doesn't, you don't stop, you don't give up. You keep on just loving and researching and finding out more how you can support your child.
And finding awesome friends to help support you.
Yeah.
Know what you're going through.
So you can kind of talk and vent and stuff
Yes.
a little bit and not feel alone. So no one should feel alone on this road of parenting, you know, a wonderful, amazing child who happens to be autistic. So that's awesome. Thank you. Is there any before we end, is there anything that you'd like to add? You said a lot though. It's okay.
I know.
I don't want to end it real quick. You'd be like, oh, I don't know what to say. Is there any piece of advice, maybe for someone who just found out that their child is on the spectrum? Maybe it was kind of a shock, like, oh, what am I getting into now? Like, how can I support my child? I know you did already mention quite a few things about that, but
yeah, I mean, coming from my experience, like it wasn't a shock to me at all. Like, it was like, oh, this all makes sense now.
Sharon, you're a teacher though, so you see kids, and you can like second grade teacher, right? And that's or at least
I taught a lot at that time. I was second grade, but yes,
yeah. And so I think that kind of that gave you more experience to look at children, go and compare them, because I just see my kids. I don't see other kids.
I am also the oldest of 10 children. So
wow, I did not know that.
Yes. So
that's a lot of kids.
I've been around a lot of kids.
Great. You're the oldest. Yeah, so I bet you're an amazing mom even before you had kids. Taking care of those kids.
I did my best.
I'm sure they all love you, and well, 9 of them. Wow. But yeah, they. I have lots of advice for someone who just finds out. But you have anything else you'd like to say? Someone who just found out.
Well, I was so late finding out, but
and I interrupted you, so go again.
No worries. But you know, they're your kids. Like, you're gonna love them no matter what. They haven't changed. They're not a different person. They haven't changed in any way.
They haven't changed.
They're still the same little person. But, you know, again, getting that knowledge and understanding better what's going on and how you can support them in that, which will change over the years. You know, they will have different needs as they move through life, and you'll have different challenges as a parent. But, you know, you just do the best you can and be the best parent you can be. And that's different for all of us depending on our child and where they're at on the spectrum. But, you know, there's a bunch of us here, and we can all support each other.
It will look different. And the thing that I want to end with is give yourself some grace. Give yourself a lot of grace. Because you're a human being that has needs too. And you've got a complicated brain too with emotions. And you need to take care of yourself too. Because when you take care of yourself, then you can be a better parent. You can be more patient. You can look at situations with, like, tell yourself to breathe and go, okay, what is she thinking? Why would he react this way? What is really going on here? And really responding thoughtfully instead of just reacting, which all of us do. But when you have those moments when you lose your temper and things like that, just know you're not alone with that.
Just lock yourself in your room.
And that's fine. If you need to separate, that's completely understandable, because you're human. And so give yourself that grace. Give yourself a hobby that you love. Give yourself something that's super fun, that has nothing to do with your child. Give yourself something fun that is really related to your child, something that your child loves to do and you guys can do together to build that relationship as well. Just as you are being an autism mom, know that there are times when you are allowed to take off that hat and be an individual too. And that is healthy to do, because me and my kids, we've got 5 kids and 2 on the spectrum. And my 2 autistic kids, their needs are so different that sometimes I forget to take off that autism mom hat, and then it gets really heavy, and you need breaks, and you need to take care of yourself. And so give yourself grace. I just want to end with that. Give yourself some grace, because there's a reason that you have a child. There is a reason, and it's because you are meant to be together.